Okay, so next we'll have a look at the individual JSON files that are needed to generate the property panel and to handle the communication backwards and forwards between Squirrel and your add-on. As we can see within the Squirrel project itself, on the right hand side in the property panel, I've got two text input fields, one that says hello world text and one for hello world response. If we jump across and look into the code, we can see how these are defined and created within the add-on. There are three main JSON files that we're interested in. First one's called default state, next one's called message bindings, and the last one's called property panel. So if we have a look at default state, this is just a JSON representation of the class that we were using within the add-on itself to store and hold the data. This gets passed up to Squirrel and Squirrel passes it back, and this is what handles the passing and receiving of data. So I've got two properties here, one called hello world data, which is a string with the word test in it, and another one which has hello world response, which is an empty string, and this is the placeholder that we'll use to send data back to Squirrel with. Looking at the next file, which is messagebindings.json, this here is it's a representation for those two properties from the default state, hello world data, and we want to use this to receive data from Squirrel. So this is from the perspective of the add-on. So the add-on wants to receive data into that property from Squirrel, and it will send data back to Squirrel in the hello world response. There's also a third property type, which is if you wanted to have a property that sends and receives data, then this will have a direction of both, and that will allow it to both send data to Squirrel but also receive data back from Squirrel as well. So we leave that as is and move on to the final file, which is the property panel JSON. So this is a JSON structure to build up the property panel within Squirrel. So you can see here, I want an accordion called general. Do you want it collapsed? False. I don't want it collapsed by default. I want it expanded. And that accordion is going to have these children in it. First of all, it will have an input box, and then next it will have a second input box. So the first one says hello world text, and the second one will say hello world response. And in here you've got different properties, so you can say allow binding to true. So this will allow you to bind information to to a spreadsheet cell. You could set that to false, and they'll only allow manual entry. Conversely, we've got a manual entry, true. We could set that to false, and that will stop people from being able to type it into that box. And we've got text area to true. This one doesn't specify text area, so text area defaults to false. If you look in the add-on documentation for all the different types of property panel components, it will give you a definitive list of all the connections on here. So input box has got a number, like you might want it to be a password, you might want it to be just numbers, you might want to turn spell checking on or off, and those sorts of things. So that's all listed in the documentation. But this here is the build-up of the property panels. So if I make a change here, so I'll change the hello world text to I'm being updated. If I save that now, and then make sure my project is running, when I go across to Squirrel and then refresh the property panel should get that updated text. So if I go across to Squirrel now, it hasn't picked it up yet. That's what this get JSON files button does here. So what that JSON files button does there is Squirrel is aware of what the add-on is running on, and it knows where in the add-on to get the default state, the message binding, and the property panel information from. So if you make changes to it here, you don't need to restart Squirrel. All you need to do is press the get JSON files button. There you go, and you can see here I've been updated, and the word test has come into here. It's also reverted back. So I had a binding pointing to a cell A1 a minute ago. Because I clicked the get JSON file, because the property panel may have changed, what will happen is it will clear all those bindings, it will reset everything up. But this is really quick and nice way of making changes in the property panel, adding new objects. If I wanted to add a third input field, let's add that in now. Give it a name. Allow boundary binding true. Let's say text area true. Save that. It'll recompile. Go across into Squirrel. Get JSON. I've now created a third one for us as well. So this is a really nice and quick way of making changes to the property panel, and then you can press the get the JSON file, and it'll get the latest version.